Welcome into another presentation of ACC Baseball Etc., part of the D1 Baseball Podcast Network and presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Week 2 is behind us. I'm Daron Vaught. Bradley Smart is here as well to talk about what we saw. We were both in Jacksonville at the Live Like Lou Jack's College Baseball Classic. Notre Dame was the ACC representative there. Yeah, you're wearing the swag, the Live Like Lou swag. Good stuff.
There we go.
So that might be where we start, but otherwise a pretty eventful weekend across the ACC. North Carolina ECU series is always fun, an in-state rivalry for the Tar Heels. And now we get to put -1 at the end of their record for the remainder of this season with a lot of baseball left. That's quirky and fun to me. And some other great, like strong performances, some teams, couple of them still undefeated on the season. Where do you want to start here? Do we start with Notre Dame just because that's what we saw with our own eyes?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. And, it was a really eventful weekend throughout the ACC because, I'm in Jacksonville. We're both watching, the games there and kind of checking scores and stuff. And it just felt like every time I checked, something crazy or weird had happened in the league. But yeah, starting with Notre Dame, I mean, they go 1-2, but I was impressed. Like, I felt like it was a good showing for them. It could have been a really tough week if they didn't do what they did on Sunday when they came back against Indiana. They were losing, I think, 8-3 in the 7th, and they came back to beat Indiana. But I thought against LSU, I mean, they threw 4 underclassmen against that lineup, which is really tough. But, they lose 9-4 in that one. And then the real heartbreaker was the Friday game because Jack Radel turned in. I wrote a piece about it on D1. I recommend you check it out. But that was unbelievable. You were the broadcaster for that game. What did you see from him there?
I mean, just sheer dominance. It was unbelievable. And Jack DeLongchamp was with me. I know he's got a video piece where he talked to Jack as well. Sheer dominance and not knowing until after the fact exactly what we were seeing in the details of sort of the pitch arsenal. Jack talked a lot about in real time, it seeming like some intentionality around one breaking ball where in fact it was actually 3 different pitches that Jack was offering up at will. It was fascinating, man. I mean, he went 6 perfect innings and only threw 68, right? 68 was his pitch count. So naturally, we as baseball fans want to see him keep throwing and try to do something spectacular. But it's an understandable decision by Sean Stifler and his coaching staff that if you're going to be what you ultimately can be this season, which for Notre Dame, their hopes is an NCAA regional team, you're going to need Jack. And Stiff, in talking to him pregame a couple of times, at one point he made a pretty good point in the argument for taking Jack out, in that, look, man, they're in South Bend. Like, they've not ramped up the way that, say, a starting pitcher for whatever Southern team would be doing this. So they just have to make decisions differently, trying to ramp their guys up. But I was fascinated by the fastball. Obviously is Radel's superpower, and it is in fact last year what got him a ton of his swing and miss. So he used it effectively, as he always does. But man, he was just, if he got ahead in a count, the world was his. And you in your piece sort of spotlighted the variance of pitches and what he was doing in what counts, and he had every player in that UCF lineup just with strings, and he was making them do whatever he wanted. It was a phenomenal performance, and thus the reason that I voted for him for ACC Player of the Week or Pitcher of the Week, and he ultimately got it. And that's even with a number of really, really good performances for other candidates there.
Yeah. I mean, the really cool thing about Radel, and I talked to him too, is just like the work he put in to get to this point. He comes in, he's got plenty of talent and raw stuff, but he really is bulked up. Like that is a big body on the mound. I think he's 6'5", 240, 250-ish. And, that's up from, I think he was like 215 as a freshman. So he's really, bulked
I'll
up.
put this out there to quickly interrupt. Frame wise, it's kind of Jake Knapp-ish. Like he's just a big donkey of a human, and the fastball and the slider are kind of like his bread and butter. So it's like, okay, it is very Jake Knapp-ish.
Yeah, and I mean the command against UCF was what Knapp did all last year, where it was just like, I'm going to throw every pitch I want exactly where I want it. It's going to be in, it's going to be out. It's, you're going to really have to guess on most. And that's what UCF's one of their hitters said too, because, UCF gets to the Notre Dame bullpen and wins that game. But what one of them was saying was just like, we didn't know what he was going to throw at any point. Like, he was locating on both sides of the plate. And then in any count, he was comfortable throwing anything. So it's, fastball, cutter, slider, curve, change, like 5 pitches for strikes. And, part of the and you mentioned building up in South Bend, like the pitch count stuff. If you look at his start last week, he was a little rusty, and I talked to him about it, and he was just like, yeah, it's throwing off a dirt mound. It's out there, real game action for the first time in a while, because obviously the weather up there does not help with the preseason.
Well, I think Stiff said they got outdoors like twice in the preseason.
Yeah,
it has not been much
for sure. But yeah, so all things considered, like that start and some of the stuff we saw from hitters in that lineup, offer some encouragement that Notre Dame can really get going. I was really, really impressed with Mark Quattrani, their backstop. We talked about it. I think we've talked about it on this pod before, but it's like you lose a Carson Tinney, and it's kind of like, man, like that's the heart of your lineup. He was just unbelievable last year. And what Quattrani's done, I mean, 2 home runs against Indiana, and he just barreled the ball the whole day. Like he's quick, good bat speed, physical guy, and he's just been such a leader behind the plate too. So especially with Davis Johnson banged up and he didn't play this weekend. So if Quattrani can stay healthy, that's a massive piece in that lineup, and I was really impressed with him.
Yeah, and not to mention for Quattrani, he caught every bit of the weekend for them, which includes an extra innings game on Sunday. So what is that, 29 innings over the weekend, and not a single passed ball. So like there's two sides to the Quattrani piece. Good to see Drew Berkland, the Minnesota transfer, their center fielder, who's going to be the guy out in center field, top of the order for the Irish. Good to see him kind of awaken with the bat. He's the one who had the walk-off hit to end it. And I think he's going to be an important player for them. And man, they're really interesting, man. Like Jace Lee didn't have a tremendous weekend at the plate, but he hit a mammoth home run. He had an outfield assist throwing a guy out at third from right field that was like an incredible throw. There's a lot to him as a player, and I think he's going to factor in heavily for whatever they turn out to be this year. I came away very, very encouraged despite a 1-2 weekend, which, LSU went 3-0. They were the only team there that didn't go 1-2 and take away a losing record. Despite that, I came away very encouraged by Notre Dame, especially if they can get Johnson back into the lineup and have the other pieces that they used. Like Noah Coy looked great defensively at shortstop. It's a team I like, and Noah Rooney, another Minnesota transfer out of the bullpen, was sharp. I really like this Notre Dame team.
Yeah, and I think Coy's a good one too, because him and Lee, Stifler was talking about it after I think the second game. He's like, those two had the most the most room to grow freshman to sophomore year, and then they did it. They both went out and had really, really good summers, and that's like the easy, okay, it's going to be a breakout player, but like it's hard to translate. And I thought they both looked really good. Coy at short, they weren't sure if they'd get Esteban Moreno back. They weren't sure if he'd get drafted. He does get drafted, so you're like, okay, Coy, like you can run with this, and he really has. And yeah, that outfield assist from Lee was a dart, and I like their arms. They didn't execute late against UCF. LSU's offense is very challenging to deal with. And, like I said, they throw a lot of young guys, really just toss them out there in the fire. But I thought there were a lot of good arms and good looks. And I think it's a staff that can really come together.
Yeah. And just to put a bow on Notre Dame, you mentioned the pitching staff. Look, man, it's not going to get a lot more difficult than that for a freshman, Caden Kroll, on a Saturday. So I think that's something that he can grow from, pitching to LSU in that kind of spot and that kind of environment. And Ty Uber, like, steady. That's a steady Sunday guy for them, and that matters because it feels like a lot of Sundays are not quite as well spoken for across the league. So there's a ton of potential there, man. If Radel can be an ACC Pitcher of the Year caliber guy, and then Kroll develops into, by the end of the year, air quotes, not being a freshman anymore, and gives them what they think he can give them, and then you got a vet who's done it all in Uber on Sundays. Like, that could be a great formula for their season.
Yeah. Uber, I do think that's so underappreciated sometimes, having like an older arm on Sunday, because like there's going to be a lot of weekends in the ACC where someone ekes out a Friday win. Notre Dame will feel good about sending Radel to win a 2-0 ball game. But then Saturday can always flip, and you gotta have someone that can eat up innings depending on what your bullpen looks like. And I do really like Uber. He's been there. He's a veteran. And Rooney too. He had kind of a shaky first outing, but I was really impressed with how he came back. He looked really sharp in his second outing of the weekend.
Yeah. So that's it for the Fighting Irish. Where should we go next? A couple of eye poppers. Miami put up a 30 spot over the weekend. Jason DeCaro with a complete game shutout in a run rule 8-inning game against ECU. That was the one on the road, right? That was the one at Clark LeClaire Stadium. Yeah, that's really impressive. What do you want to jump to?
Yeah, I thought the North Carolina series that's a good spot to go. It was really interesting because DeCaro did DeCaro things. I mean, not only did the offense really, you got the thump from the Cooper Nicholsons, the Eric Paulsons that you wanted, but you also got, we have a Friday night guy that can match up with anyone. And it was DeCaro Norby, and we're like, this could be like a 2-1 game. Ethan Norby for East Carolina, and instead it's 10-0 and it's done in 8 innings. So I think DeCaro just, there's a really good piece from Aaron Fit up on the site about him, and just how talented he is. And it's easy to forget, I think he's still 19. Like, this is a young guy who's just consistently been excellent. And then it was a weird Saturday game for them. It was 3-3 into the 7th, and that's kind of like, North Carolina is going to shut it down and steal a run somewhere, manufacture a run, and take the series. And then they gave up 7 runs. So it was just one of those weekends. And it is such a bummer we don't get a series winner out of this, because I know what it means to both of those programs. And I know the fan bases, East Carolina in particular, they're more upset about that, because North Carolina came back to tie it, and then the rain and the delay, and then the ultimate draw, which I think is North Carolina's first since like 2005, because there shouldn't be draws in baseball.
Sure.
But yeah, interesting series. I'm not worried about North Carolina. I think rivalry series are always pretty interesting. But it was a little surprising to see kind of those struggles closing out that second game.
Yeah, and with the struggles that ECU has had at the beginning of their season, this is a team that was kind of, I guess, sort of, maybe fringe top 25 in the preseason. Certainly was in a position where they could pretty quickly play themselves into a top 25 ranking had it gone better out of the chute. And it's a program that, we like and respect a lot. So yeah, like, by no means did North Carolina have to run away with this series to come out of the weekend still feeling pretty good about their season. I like the progression of the less familiar North Carolina bats out of this. Paulson, you mentioned, is a pretty important one for them and going forward. And Gavin Gallagher still doing great things. He actually looks to be like more of a regular season hitter this year than he has been his first couple of years, right? It was always he was a fine hitter, but he didn't need to set the world on fire most weekends. And then he would get to a regional and be the best hitter on planet Earth for a few days. He's giving them a little bit more of that regional version of himself, which is a huge positive sign for North Carolina. So yeah, like I think they're in a good spot. They look to be what we have believed them to be to this point.
Yeah, and that's a good point on Gallagher, because last year, I forget the exact numbers, but he did not have a good first month or so. Like, I don't think he was really hitting at all.
I mean, I think it would be fair to say that at one point, abysmal would be a better descriptor, right? Like, it was just not a good start for him.
But yeah, he homered, and I think he had 6 RBIs over the weekend. He's really going to be like the guy on that team in a way that he didn't have to be for most of last year. So it's good. It's good to see him, kind of chugging along. And when it comes to offense, yeah, that Miami series was ridiculous. I mean, you could say the same about Georgia Tech, but they at least had like a close game in there. Miami, 15 runs, 14 runs, 14 runs. And then because Lafayette couldn't fly home, they're like, no run rule in effect. And they put up a 30 spot. So it's just from everywhere. I mean, ACC Player of the Week, Dylan Dubovic, a freshman, wasn't really on the radar coming in, just with, the depth in the outfield. And then you lose Galvin and you're like, okay, let's slot in this guy. And he goes, 9 for 11 with 3 home runs, 2 doubles, and 9 RBIs over the weekend. So it's an embarrassment of riches. And yes, it's Lafayette, and the weekend before it was Lehigh. So it's, they've done things like this in the past, but it's just the numbers they're putting up are crazy.
Yeah, and Georgia Tech too. It's just again, I understand the schedule and the non-ACC caliber nature of it to this point, but they could be losing these games and sputtering offensively. So to me, it's not a bad sign at all. Like, you can't. It's tough to knock Miami and Georgia Tech putting up so many runs early in the season. And Drew Burris was the 3rd inning of one of their games, and he was a single from the cycle, and he didn't get the cycle because it was a run rule game and they took him out, right? Like, they are tuned up, I think, offensively, and maybe that changes and you need to kind of recalibrate at the beginning of the league schedule. But I'm so excited to see both Miami and Georgia Tech in person and see them in ACC play, because those lineups are just like, they're going to do damage. Virginia too, for that matter, like, they continue to hit. Gracia with a few home runs. Like, there's a lot to be said for sort of the eye-popping nature of this preseason for several teams and their offenses. So I would have more on Miami and Georgia Tech, but I don't think there needs to be at this point. It's just like, that's really cool. They're, really good offensively, like we thought they were going to be. They're scoring a lot of runs, and it's kind of a cool, let's wait and see.
Yeah. I think the one thing I do look at, because you look at, a Burris, a Lackey, a Hernandez against like Stony Brook's arms, and Stony Brook had some good guys. I think they had a guy up to 98 on Friday, but they're gonna get theirs in that kind of series. What I do like to look for in those series is what the arms do, especially if they're limiting free passes, because these lineups might not have a lot of power, but they're college lineups. A lot of them are veteran guys. How do you approach that? How do you handle that? And I think it was for Georgia Tech, a guy like Dylan Loy, I think he threw like 5-something innings out of the bullpen, just dominant stuff. Like, that's a good look at someone that, could end up in the rotation, could be in a similar Patel role as last year. And then I also think responding to adversity is important in these early weeks. Stony Brook took a 5-2 lead against Georgia Tech in one of those games. They got to Mason Patel, but Georgia Tech comes right back, good at bats, and then they end up winning in the 10th. What I will say is the most painful play for a third baseman, especially when you're trying to get, an upset. You're right in position, Lackey's ball's right down the line, and it just hits the bag and just kicks out. And that shot of the third baseman, just like he goes to react to it and just can't do anything. And that's the ball. That's the ball game there. But yeah, I think for Miami, it's similar. They got some really good starts throughout that rotation, and that's just something to keep an eye on, because I do think they're going to hit a lot, but you got to make sure you're controlling games on the mound as well.
Yeah, that's well put. Well put. Maybe we move to NC State here. I'm going to start baseball. I'm going to start with Jacob Dudan. Dalton Bargo hit another home run, and I said it last week. I think I'm afraid we did not talk enough about the acquisition of Dalton Bargo for the Wolfpack, but we'll push that aside for now. Dudan has made the transfer to becoming a starting pitcher, and I am going to admit I needed to see it to believe it. But I'm in. I'm in. He's their guy. Not that they don't have other dudes, because I picked on this very program, Ryan Marone, to win ACC Pitcher of the Year, which just kind of furthers the point that if Dudan is a dude, if the dude is a dude, then this is going to be an incredibly formidable team in the ACC. And that's the big takeaway for me for the Wolfpack. Like, Dudan as a bona fide starter that can give you length and dominance, it changes everything for NC State.
Yeah, I mean, and when we were looking at Dudan transitioning to a starter, the two big things was like, is he going to be able to command his fastball consistently? Because, the slider's his bread and butter as a reliever, gets a ton of chase and whiff on it, but you can't just throw a slider as a starter. Like, guys if you're not locating your fastball, you're going to run into issues. And then the other was like, is he going to maintain his velocity? Because like, he's a high octane arm, but like, what does it look like, in the fifth after he's been, in and out of the dugout a few times, maybe had to labor some inning or whatnot. He's checked both those boxes. I mean, he's commanding incredibly well. He averaged 95 miles an hour throughout that 7-inning start against Princeton, and 24 whiffs on the slider. So it remains, just a weapon. And I think it was really encouraging, granted, this was Princeton's first game of the year. Those bats had not seen anyone. They, the Ivy League starts a week late. And even with that, he was just in complete control. And I thought it was really impressive how, he adjusted from, week one, he was pitching to contact, really, in Puerto Rico. Week two, intentional or not, he was just piling up strikeouts, 11 punch outs. So it was really encouraging to see Dudan. They also played two of the strangest games back to back in a doubleheader I've seen, and that's what I meant earlier when I said I love baseball. They put up 16 runs, just rout Princeton 16-1, and then they get shut out in the nightcap and they lose 1-0. Like, that's ridiculous. They come back out in midweek and put up 27 against Richmond. So, you've scored just a ridiculous amount of runs over 3 games, and you're 2-1.
Yeah. What was the aggregate score in the Princeton series? Because of obviously a stellar couple of games holding them.
Yeah, it was 22-6.
Yeah. So, and you didn't win all 3. Like, that's tough. Tough beat.
For sure.
Yeah, no, they're maybe the team that, like, we always respect, but because there are so many in the ACC, it just feels like, for whatever reason, they're always on the fringe of whatever we feel to be that top tier, that top, maybe it's 3 teams, maybe it's 4 teams in the league. I don't know. I am on notice now. I think NC State could be among the very best teams in the ACC.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like they have 4 good starters too, because Cooper Consiglio, jumped into the rotation with, they had Andrews going midweek and didn't have a great outing, so they had Consiglio go, and he was really good. in that finale. And then Andrews was really good against Richmond, I think. So it's just a ton of depth on the mound. And when the lineup is producing, like, yeah, I agree completely. Like, there's no reason they aren't a top tier team in the ACC.
Yeah. Let's jump to Louisville and Florida State. Weird weekends for both. For Louisville, they had that series that they dropped prior to against Michigan State. Do you have concern? We'll start with Louisville. Do you have concern about the Cardinals?
Yeah, I think I'm a little worried about the mound.
Yeah.
Like what they have on the mound. I think they had 15 walks in 26 innings at Globe Life. And you're playing good teams. You're playing Nebraska, Auburn, Michigan. You played a Power 4 team. Granted, not a consistently good Power 4 team in week 1, but a Big Ten lineup. So they fell out of the top 25 because I think we need to see improvements on the mound. And the bullpen had a whip over 2 in the weekend, and they're still without Zion Rose, but it's like, I'm not worried about the offense. Like, I think they're going to produce. I think there was a lot of whiff that I didn't love over the weekend. They struck out 32 times to 9 walks. That's not good, obviously. But I think believe in that lineup hitting. It's just, what are we going to do with the bullpen? Like, who's going to step up? Who's going to be that high leverage arm? They're trying a lot of different guys. And there's just a ton of traffic. It seems like every time I checked in on those games, traffic on the base pass. So this is the same Louisville we saw last year, though. Like, they were not great for a good chunk of the season. They were really inconsistent on the mound. So it's, you believe in them figuring it out, but it's definitely not what they wanted out of the gate.
Yeah. And then Florida State, the pitching has not been set up as easily as we thought it was going to be, right? With Wes Mendez and then Trey Beard coming in, these assumed sort of second ace for them. He's been out of the pen. What can you what can you describe as being kind of the holdup with them? I mean, they had the loss over the weekend. Which one was it? Sunday, they scored 1 run, and it was a Miles Bailey solo homer, right? It's in addition to getting touched up a bit on the mound, they couldn't produce anything outside of their star first baseman.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of similar to Louisville, like very similar weekends. Like, you start off strong, you win, and I think Fridays was an example of, okay, yeah, you go Wes Mendez and John Abraham out of the bullpen, like. Mm-hmm. That's going to get you a lot of wins on Friday because those are both really good arms and they've looked really good so far. But then the rest of the weekend, like, it was challenging. They Moore and Monka and Beard threw some, but he's definitely not 100% back. And so it's just a similar question. It's like, okay, this staff needs to settle into roles. The bullpen gave up 13 runs in 16 innings, like same as Louisville. That's not going to win you weekends. And then, like you said, the Sunday game, you get blown out by Nebraska and Bailey's your only offense. And like Louisville, they struck out 32 times over the weekend. And you see really good arms, but you're going to see really good arms in the ACC. So it's one of those things where it's just got to get right. And I have all the confidence in the world in that Florida State staff and lineup. I think there's a lot of good bats in there. Gabe Frazier had a really good weekend. Yeah. He was 5 for 11, double, tripled. One of only 3 hitters that had 3 hits. So it's like, just gotta get some more consistent at bats up and down that lineup. But I think they're gonna be just fine. Obviously, Louisville dropped way more than Florida State did in the rankings for a reason. Florida State, there just seems to be a little bit more there and a little bit more trust that they'll find consistency quicker. Just when you look at like Louisville's record in the regular season the last few years.
Yeah, I was just about to say, in terms of my faith meter for those teams, it's way higher at this point for Florida State. I think I'm legitimately concerned about Louisville in ways that I am not about the Seminoles. Like, they're going to be just fine. But, weird weekends. They both drop. Louisville out of our top 25. Florida State 22 now, right? Is that – I'm not looking at it right now.
21.
21. So Still plenty of runway. Obviously, we're not even into league play yet, so lots of chances for either of those teams to catapult back up the rankings there. Let's move to Virginia Tech. This was an interesting series, and you said it coming in, and I'm glad you did. Like when we previewed the weekend, it was kind of off my radar, and you were like, "No, wait, what about Virginia Tech Rutgers?" They are, if you were to pull up the ACC standings, of course, they don't. There are no actual ACC standings at this point because there aren't conference records. There are only overall records. But if you were to pull up the ACC standings right now, the Hokies near the top, 7-1. It's been a really, really good non-conference schedule for them so far.
Yeah, and it's been interesting. They have not made it easy at any point in the first 2 weeks. And if you watch if you followed along on Friday, you saw them just get destroyed by Rutgers. First loss of the year, they lose 16-1. They'd kind of empty the bullpen and just sort of take it. But the response to that was it's a big reason why they are 6-1, because coming into that, they trailed in every game, and they'd won all four before that. But that game on Saturday, they win 9-8 in 10 innings. It was ridiculous in terms of win probability swings. There was one of those classic up and down charts at the end of the game. They enter the ninth down 2, they tie it up. Then they give up 3 runs in the top of the 10th to Rutgers, and it's like, okay, series loss. How are you going to get out of this one? And then you hit 3 home runs in the bottom of the 10th with freshman Ethan Ball walking it off, and then that momentum carried over, and they won the next game as well. So it wasn't easy. They really made it interesting, and it was stressful for Virginia Tech fans down the stretch in Sunday's game too. But I think what's really intriguing to me is they're not playing their best baseball yet. And yet they're 6-1, 7-1 with the midweek win over James Madison, I believe. Yeah. But yeah, their offense is not, outside of a few guys, has not really kicked in yet. And they've been moving a lot of guys around in the pitching staff, and we've seen some success, some struggles, but at the end of the day, that is a good start. And you've stacked a bunch of wins. Now you get to really start testing yourself and trying to say, okay, let's start playing, good baseball moving forward.
It'll be an interesting test case once we get to ACC play. It's good record that they had to labor for compared to a Miami or a Georgia Tech, right? It's the age-old question, is a close win better than a dominant win in terms of being tested and under fire, and that preparing you for the bigger games that you'll have in a season. So I just they got a lot of pieces that I'm intrigued by. The Ethan Ball kid seems awesome. We've talked about their pitching and the ceiling for that and our high hopes for it. They've got my attention. I'm interested in Virginia Tech.
Yeah, and the guy Ball's gone in the headlines. True freshman. I've got a story going up soon on D1 about him. But Sam Grube has been ridiculous. Just pure bat to ball and great power that he can tap into. He went 6 for 12 over the weekend, 3 RBIs, 2 home runs, a double. Just a really good piece, and they've needed that because they've had some guys that are expected to be big bats for them just kind of limp out of the gate a bit offensively. So, obviously they're going to get tested this weekend down in Arlington with I think a trio of ranked teams. So that'll be a really good series weekend to watch to see, okay, how do these arms handle, some tougher lineups? And then how do these bats, that some of them have kind of been struggling a bit, can they adjust against, some really talented arms?
Yeah. I've got just a couple of more that I think we need to blow through real quick here as we wrap up. Cal beat UC Irvine. Incredible. Love it. Spectacular. Give me 14 of them. And then Wake Forest, the depth of their pitching is what we've talked about all season long, and it is going to pay dividends without Matthew Dallas. in as well. So like, I don't know if you've got quick notes on those, but those are the only other two things that really stood out to me from over the weekend.
Yeah, I think the Cal series is just so big because they did not have a great first weekend. They split with Santa Clara. And you drop the opener 5-3 on the road, and it's like, okay, uphill battle to get back into this series. But they come out and win 11-2, and then they really throw well. I thought Gavin Eddy and Ethan Foley both pitched great. And then how about Hideki Prather? I love a guy that ACC transfer to ACC school is always kind of fun, but especially when you just didn't really get a chance. Obviously, he was behind Jacob Jarrell at Clemson in the depth chart there, but he went 6 for 13 over the weekend with 2 home runs, 3 doubles, legitimate player of the week candidate. So I was really impressed with him, and sort of what Cal's got cooking. I think they're going to throw. I think they're going to pitch well, and if they can get enough offensively, if a guy like Prather and the returning guys can kind of share the load a bit, that could be a pretty sneaky team. And then Wake's arm talent. Going into the midweek, they were averaging, I think, 15.6 strikeouts per 9, fanning almost 40% of batters. They had like a 36% whiff rate. Just metrically, like, they're just loaded with guys. Chris Lavonis touched 100 twice, 10 strikeout start. You go from facing him, Sienna goes from facing him to Duncan Marston, who's up to almost up to 98 and gets 7 strikeouts. Like, Dallas being okay is important long term, but they also have the guys to say, okay, yep, we can move some guys around. We already have extended some guys out that can slot into that weekend rotation. So I feel really good about Wake, even more so with Luke Costello back. Because how about not playing the first 4 games and then hitting a home run on the first pitch you see? Like, that's sick. That's awesome.
Pretty great, and especially the way that Andrew Costello, his younger brother, who's the early enrollee, showed he's got potential too. I think ultimately they're going to want both of those guys in the lineup to be their best selves. That's a fun story, something really fun to keep an eye on. Yeah, for sure. And I think I'm just running through the other teams. Duke took 3 of 4 again on the weekend against Milwaukee, which was solid showing. They're off to a good start. The competition will tick up. And then Clemson, I don't want to say quietly, but I think they're 8-0 now. Kind of quietly, one of those undefeated teams. Like, they're just kind of motoring along as they typically do.
Yeah, and it's interesting with them. They kind of had a tough time with Army in the, they sweep them obviously, but Army was in those games, and so was Bryant. And if you're a Clemson fan, you really like the look of your offense, and you like the look of what your staff's done, but it's got to feel a little familiar to years past, where it's like, hey, we're winning a lot of close games. Like, I know it's early and there's a lot of ball to play, but like a pair of 2-run wins against Bryant, the first game you're tied 3-3 in the 8th. Like, they've been in a lot of close. It's kind of like Virginia Tech. They've been in a lot of close games. I think the difference is it hasn't felt in doubt. Like, it's felt like, okay, Clemson's going to win this game. But I do think it's interesting to see, they tapped into a lot of power this offseason. The arms took a step. Aiden Canuck and Michael Sharman have been outstanding as sort of a 1-2 punch. But it is a little interesting to see the scores that, come out of Clemson so far.
Yeah, no doubt. That's it. That's a show. That's tight. Well done, Bradley. We've got some fun stuff coming up this weekend to send everybody away to. You mentioned Clemson, some cool rivalry games. They've got South Carolina, Miami, Florida is this weekend. Some pretty fun ones. Virginia Tech is at Globe Life in Arlington, so some stiff competition down there. Good games on tap. I think this is a solid pod. I would give us a record of, I started to say we won it, and our record is 1-0. But you know what? It's Wednesday. We're a couple days late, so I think we might have to call it a draw. We might have to be 0-1 this week.
I think that's fair. I think the timing alone just knocks us off a bit.
And frankly, we deserve it to just be saddled with a -1 on the end of our record for the rest of the year. We'll wear it. It's okay. Good to see you in Jacksonville. Great times there, man. And I know you're mission control this weekend. You're just hanging.
Yes, sir. You'll get a lot of ACC coverage from me as I finally can look at all 16 teams.
Love it. That's perfect for our listeners and viewers. So stay tapped in on what Bradley's got going on over the weekend. I will not see an ACC team. I will be in Frisco at the Frisco Classic, where the league does not have a representative, but it should be fun anyway. I will call some good baseball, and it'll be a good weekend. So everybody, enjoy the games. Thanks for joining us on ACC Baseball Etc. We will talk again soon, including tomorrow. I meant to plug this earlier. Tomorrow, you might have seen that Duke just hired a new general manager. He himself, along with his head coach, Corey Muscara, will be on this program tomorrow. So a couple different things coming your way this week. Appreciate it as always. And we'll talk to you soon on ACC Baseball Etc.